The precision of structural engineering saved my life, though not in the way you might expect. It wasn't a building collapse I avoided or a critical flaw I caught before disaster struck. No, engineering saved me by teaching me that every system, no matter how complex, can be understood, documented, and when necessary, completely dismantled with surgical precision. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife's elaborate conspiracy to destroy me, and how I use the same methodical approach I apply to building skyscrapers to orchestrate the complete annihilation of everyone who betrayed me. But I should start at the beginning, 15 years ago, when I was 27, and walking into Harrington Engineering Group for my first day of work. The Denver skyline stretched before me, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, each building a testament to human ambition and mathematical certainty. George Harrington himself met me in the lobby, a giant of a man whose hands still bore the calluses of actual construction work despite his executive position. "David Mitchell," he said, his grip firm enough to test the tensile strength of my bones. "Top of your class at CU Boulder, Masters in Structural Engineering. Professor Coleman tells me you see numbers the way musicians see notes. Professor Coleman is generous with his praise, Mr. Harrington. Call me George. And no, Coleman's a harsh bastard who failed half his students. If he says you're exceptional, you are. Come on, let me show you your desk." The engineering floor was everything I'd dreamed about during those long nights studying in the university library. Walls of monitors displayed complex CAD drawings, 3D models rotating slowly to reveal every angle of ambitious structures, whiteboards covered in calculations that would determine whether buildings stood for centuries or collapsed in decades. My desk was small, crammed between two senior engineers who eyed me with the suspicion reserved for young hotshots who might make them look bad. "Your first assignment," George said, dropping a folder thick as a phone book on my desk. "Riverside Tower, 42 stories of mixed-use construction. Stevens and Martinez here have been working on it for 6 months. I want fresh eyes on the calculations before we submit for permits next week." Stevens, a 20-year veteran whose hairline had retreated in direct proportion to his advancement at the firm, snorted. "Waste of time, George. We've been doing this since this kid was in middle school." "Humor me," George said, but his eyes held a warning. "Check everything twice, David. That's the first rule here. The second rule is that if something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why, you dig until you find out what it is." It took me 3 days of reviewing their calculations, 3 days of Stevens and Martinez making increasingly snide comments about college boys who thought they knew better than experienced engineers. But on the third day, at 11:47 p.m., when the office was empty except for the cleaning crew, I found it. The load distribution on the building's core was wrong. Not obviously wrong. The error was subtle, hidden in the interplay between the foundation settling estimates and the wind load calculations. The building would stand for maybe 10 years, 15 if they were lucky. But eventually, hairline cracks would appear in the core structure. Within 20 years, those cracks would spread. The building would give warning signs, doors that wouldn't close properly, windows that would crack for no apparent reason. But by then it would be too late. Catastrophic failure would be inevitable. "This can't be right," I muttered, running the calculations again on my computer, then by hand on paper, then on the whiteboard in the conference room. "Problem, college boy?" Martinez's voice made me jump. He'd come back for something and found me surrounded by equations. "The core load distribution. Look at this." I walked him through the calculations, watched his condescension transform into concern, then into something approaching panic. "Get Stevens on the phone. Now." Within an hour, the conference room was full. George was there in jeans and a sweater, called from his home in Cherry Hills. Every senior engineer was reviewing my work, checking and double-checking. The room smelled of coffee and fear sweat. "The kid's right," George finally announced at 2 a.m. "If we'd built this..." "Minimum $30 million in lawsuits when it failed," Stevens finished, his face pale. "Not to mention the lives." George's massive hand landed on my shoulder. "You just saved this company, son. Hell, you just saved lives. What made you catch it? These calculations have been reviewed 6 times. "Something felt wrong," I said. "The numbers were all technically within tolerance, but the pattern. It was like a piece of music where one note is just slightly off-key. You might not consciously notice it, but your brain knows something's not right." That was the moment my reputation was born. The engineer who could see patterns others missed, who could feel the flaws in perfect-looking mathematics. Within 2 years, I was running my own projects. Within 5, I was George's right hand, the one he trusted with the contracts that could make or break the firm. The Denver Tech Center Apex building was my masterpiece. 60 stories of glass and steel that would reshape the city's skyline. It was also the project that brought Laura into my life. The celebration party was at the Brown Palace Hotel, Denver's most historic venue. The ballroom was packed with city officials, potential investors, and representatives from every major construction supplier in the state. I was standing by the windows, uncomfortable in my rented tuxedo, watching the city lights and wondering how soon I could leave without offending George, when I heard her voice. "Let me guess. You're calculating the structural load of this ballroom's chandelier." I turned to find a woman who seemed to glow in the ambient light. Blonde hair swept up in an elegant twist, a black cocktail dress that suggested rather than revealed, green eyes that held intelligence and something else, amusement, maybe, or challenge. "Actually, I was estimating the wind load on the building's facade," I said. "The chandelier's load is straightforward. It's static. The dynamic forces on a 100-year-old building's exterior, that's interesting." She laughed, and the sound was like perfectly tuned steel cables vibrating in harmony. "Oh God, you really are an engineer. I'm Laura Bennett. I work for Steelson Suppliers. My job is to convince you that our steel is superior to everyone else's steel. But between you and me, steel is pretty much steel. It's all about the relationships." "David Mitchell. I'm the lead engineer on the Apex building. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. You're the genius who saved Riverside Tower, who designed the innovative seismic system for the Morrison complex, who George Harrington treats like the son he wishes he had." "George has a son." "Richard? Please. Richard's too busy playing hedge fund manager in New York to care about actual building. Word is he thinks construction is beneath him. Literally getting your hands dirty with physical things when you could be moving numbers around on screens." "You seem to know a lot about Harrington Engineering's internal dynamics." "It's my job to know. Information is currency in sales, Mr. Mitchell. May I call you David?" "Only if you'll have dinner with me on Saturday." The words were out before I could stop them. I didn't ask women out, especially not women who looked like they belonged on magazine covers while I belonged in server rooms checking calculations. But she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I thought you'd never ask. Pick me up at 7. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Washington Park, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. I'd agonized over where to take her, finally choosing comfort over impressiveness. "Tell me about your family," she said over plates of homemade pasta. "My father was a carpenter," I said. "Old school, everything done by hand. He could look at a piece of wood and see exactly what it could become. He taught me that anything worth building was worth building right, even if it took longer, even if it cost more. He died just after I graduated college, lung cancer from years of breathing sawdust before proper safety equipment was standard." "I'm sorry." "He lived long enough to see me get my master's degree. That was what mattered to him." "My mother died when I was in college. Car accident. I have a brother, Patrick, also an engineer, works in Portland. We talk every week, see each other a few times a year." "What about you?" "My father owns a small construction company in Fort Collins. Nothing fancy, mostly residential and small commercial projects. My mother is a homemaker, very traditional, Catholic, conservative, the kind of woman who has dinner on the table at 6 every night and thinks women should be married by 25. My younger sister Jennifer married a pastor right out of college. They have 4 kids already and she homeschools them all." "And you?" I rebelled, got my MBA from Michigan, moved to Denver, got a job in sales. My parents are still waiting for me to come to my senses and settle down. I'm 28, which makes me practically a spinster in their eyes. "Why sales?" "I'm good with people. I can read them, understand what they want, sometimes before they know themselves. And honestly, I like the game of it, the negotiation, the strategy, the moment when everything clicks and the deal closes. It's like solving a puzzle, but the pieces are human nature instead of numbers. That's how I feel about engineering. Except my pieces don't have feelings or change their minds halfway through construction. She laughed. That must be nice. Predictable. Sometimes predictable is good. You can count on physics. Gravity always works the same way. Steel has consistent properties. Mathematics doesn't lie. No, she said, and something flickered in her eyes. Numbers don't lie. People, on the other hand, are why I prefer buildings. But you asked me to dinner. Am I that predictable? No, I admitted. You're the most unpredictable thing I've encountered in years. It's terrifying. Good, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Life should have some surprises. We dated for 18 months. Laura was everything I wasn't. Social, where I was solitary, intuitive, where I was analytical, comfortable with ambiguity, where I needed certainty. She drew me out of my shell, made me laugh at parties where I would have stood in corners, calculating load-bearing walls. I taught her about engineering, showing her the beauty in mathematics, the elegance of forces in balance. You really love this, she said one night, watching me work on plans for a new hospital. We were in my apartment, she was wearing one of my t-shirts, and the domesticity of it made my chest tight with an emotion I couldn't quite quantify. It's about creating something permanent, I said. Something that will outlast us. This hospital will save lives for 100 years. Long after we're gone, children will be born here. People will be healed here. That's immortality of a sort. Is that what you want? Immortality? I want to matter. I want to build things that matter. You matter to me, she said simply. Marry me. The words surprised both of us. I hadn't planned to propose, certainly not while wearing sweatpants and surrounded by blueprints, but Laura had that effect on me, making me act on instinct rather than calculation. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, of course, yes. The wedding was at the Brown Palace, in the same ballroom where we'd met. George Harrington was my best man. My own father was gone, and George had become something of a surrogate. Laura was radiant in her dress, her father walking her down the aisle with tears streaming down his weathered face. I promise, Laura said in her vows, to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams and share your burdens, to be your foundation when you need stability and your motivation when you need to reach higher. I promise to build a life with you as solid and lasting as the structures you create. I promise, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me, to love and cherish you, to be your shelter in storms and your companion in sunshine, to approach our marriage with the same care and precision I bring to my work, ensuring that what we build together will stand the test of time. George pulled me aside at the reception. You did good, son. Laura's special. She understands this business, understands what we do. That's rare. I know. I still can't quite believe she chose me. Don't sell yourself short. You're going places, David. And now, you have someone worthy to go there with you. The early years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped. Laura left her job at Steelson, saying she wanted to focus on building our life together. We bought a house in Cherry Creek. I designed it myself, every angle calculated for perfect light, every room proportioned according to mathematical principles that created unconscious harmony. Laura made it a home, filling it with warmth and laughter and dinner parties that somehow made even me seem social. When Nathan was born, I held him for the first time and understood what my father meant about building something that mattered. This tiny person, this perfect construction of cells and potential, was the most important thing I'd ever create. Emily followed 3 years later, an artist from the moment she could hold a crayon, seeing the world in colors and emotions where Nathan saw it in patterns and logic. Laura thrived as a mother and as what society called a corporate wife. She joined the Denver Architecture Foundation, eventually earning a seat on the board. She organized charity galas that raised millions for sustainable building projects in underserved communities. She remembered every client's spouse's name, their children's schools, their anniversaries, their favorite wines. At company events, she was my secret weapon. While I explained technical specifications, she built relationships that turned potential clients into loyal partners. You two are perfect together, George told me one afternoon, watching Laura charm a notoriously difficult client into signing a $40 million contract. She understands people the way you understand physics. Together, you're unstoppable. The years passed in a blur of success. The Apex building won international awards. My innovative seismic retrofitting technique was patented, earning millions for Harrington Engineering. I published papers in engineering journals, spoke at conferences, became the face of structural innovation in Denver. Through it all, Laura was beside me, my anchor and my sail simultaneously. Then George got sick. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, aggressive and unforgiving. He called me to his home one evening, 2 months after the diagnosis. He'd already lost 30 pounds, his powerful frame diminishing daily. "I need to tell you something," he said, gesturing for me to sit beside his bed. "Richard's coming back from New York." My stomach dropped. Richard Harrington, George's only child, had visited perhaps 5 times in the 10 years I'd worked at the firm. Each visit was brief, filled with barely concealed disdain for the manual labor of construction. "He's going to run the business side," George continued. "He needs this, David. Needs to prove something. Maybe to me, maybe to himself. I don't know." "George, Richard doesn't understand engineering. He doesn't respect it." "I know. That's why I need you to help him. You'll run the engineering side, he'll handle the business. Together, you can keep Harrington Engineering alive." "What about making me partner?" "You promised, and I keep my promises. The paperwork is already drawn up. When I die, you'll own 30% of the firm. Richard gets 40 as my heir, and the remaining 30% stays with the other senior partners. You'll have enough weight to keep him from destroying what we've built." But George died before the paperwork was finalized. A stroke took him in his sleep, 6 weeks after our conversation. Richard arrived from New York the day after the funeral, taking over George's corner office before his father's personal items had even been boxed up. "David," Richard said at our first meeting, not looking up from his laptop, "I know my father relied on you heavily. I want you to know I value your technical expertise." Technical expertise. As if engineering was just a minor detail in the construction business. "But," he continued, "we need to modernize. Harrington Engineering has been stagnant for years. We need better profit margins, shorter project timelines, more aggressive client acquisition. I'll be bringing in some consultants from McKinsey to help streamline operations. Your father believed in putting quality first. Profits followed naturally from reputation." Richard's smile was all teeth, no warmth, like a shark who'd spotted blood in the water. "That's a quaint philosophy, but this is business, not academia. Buildings are products, David. Engineering is just the manufacturing process. We need to think like a corporation, not like craftsmen." Over the following months, Richard systematically dismantled everything George had built. The collaborative atmosphere was replaced with glass-walled offices and hot desking. The senior engineers who'd been with the firm for decades were pushed toward early retirement. Young MBAs fresh from Ivy League schools were brought in, people who knew everything about spreadsheets and nothing about structural loads. "We need to reduce project timelines by 30%, Richard announced at a partners meeting 6 months after taking over. "That's impossible without compromising safety standards," I argued. "Other firms do it. Other firms have higher failure rates and more lawsuits. Acceptable risks. You need to think like an entrepreneur, David, not like a technician." Technician. The word was deliberately chosen to diminish, to reduce what I did to mere manual labor. I saw several of the senior engineers bristle, but they said nothing. Jobs were harder to find at their age, and Richard had made it clear that disagreement would lead to unemployment. I came home that night furious, pacing our living room while Laura listened patiently. "He's destroying everything George built," I said, "turning a firm built on excellence into a profit mill that will eventually collapse under the weight of its own corner cutting." "Maybe that's not entirely bad," Laura said carefully. "Hear me out. Yes, Richard's approach is crude, but the firm has been stagnant. You've been passed over for partnership 3 times because George always had an excuse. Maybe some fresh blood, some new perspectives. Could be good." Fresh blood? These MBAs he's hiring think CAD stands for clients are dollars. Laura laughed. "That's terrible, but David, you can't fight him directly. He owns 40% of the firm now, and he's convinced the other partners that his way means more money. You need to be smarter. What do you suggest?" "Let me help." I looked at her, confused. "How?" "Richard's creating a position, Director of Client Services. Someone to manage relationships, coordinate between engineering and sales, basically be the bridge between the technical side and the business side. I could do that. You haven't worked in 13 years? I've been working, just not for a salary. Every charity event I've organized, every client dinner I've hosted, every relationship I've cultivated, that's work, and I'm good at it. You know I am. She was right. Laura had an instinctive understanding of people that I'd never possess. She could read a room instantly, know exactly what to say to diffuse tension or close a deal. You'd be working for Richard. I'd be working with Richard. There's a difference. And more importantly, I'd be working for us, for our family's future. If Richard's going to transform the firm, we need someone on the inside who understands both sides. Someone who can protect what George built while adapting to new realities. I don't know, Laura. There's something about him I don't trust. You don't trust anyone who doesn't appreciate engineering. But that's exactly why you need me there. I can translate between you two, make sure your work is valued even if Richard doesn't understand it. The conversation continued for hours, Laura gradually wearing down my resistance with logical arguments and emotional appeals. She missed using her degree, missed feeling useful beyond planning fundraisers. The kids were older now. Nathan was 13, Emily 10. They didn't need her hovering constantly. If it would make you happy, I finally said, then you should do it. Her face lit up. Really? You wouldn't mind? Mind? I'd love having you at the office. We'd be a team just like George always said. She kissed me then, deeply, gratefully. I love you, David Mitchell. Everything I do is for us, for our family. You know that, right? I know, I love you too. Laura started at Harrington the following Monday. Richard, to my surprise, was enthusiastic about the hire. Brilliant idea, he said, shaking my hand with what seemed like genuine warmth. Laura understands our clients in a way my MBAs from Wharton never could. She's got that rare combination of intelligence and intuition. He gave her an office on the executive floor, just 3 doors down from his corner suite. I helped her move in, carrying boxes of personal items, photos of the kids, her University of Michigan diploma, a small succulent I'd given her on our anniversary because she joked that it was the only plant she couldn't kill. This view is incredible, she said, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows. The mountains stretched across the horizon, snow-capped peaks catching the morning light. Better than my view of the parking garage, I admitted. Your view is of your work, she said, gesturing toward the construction sites visible in the distance. That's more impressive than any mountain. The first few months were golden. Laura threw herself into the role with an intensity I hadn't seen since her days at Steelson. She revolutionized our client relations, implementing systems that tracked not just project specifications but personal details that mattered. The client whose daughter was applying to colleges, the one whose wife was undergoing chemotherapy, the one who collected vintage guitars. She remembered everything and made everyone feel valued. 3 major contracts in her first quarter, a hospital expansion, a tech campus, and a luxury hotel. Each one she landed through a combination of strategic brilliance and personal charm that left competitors wondering what had happened. Your wife is a revelation, Richard told me at the company Christmas party. She understands leverage and relationship dynamics better than anyone I've worked with. I watched them that night, heads bent together as they discussed strategy, Laura laughing at something Richard said. I felt pride, not jealousy. My wife was succeeding, proving her worth in a corporate world that often dismissed women her age as irrelevant. The changes were gradual, so subtle I didn't notice them at first. Late strategy meetings that ran through dinner became normal. Richard wants to go over the Peterson account, Laura would say, texting me not to wait up. Weekend client entertainment that didn't include spouses. It would be awkward for you to be there as both the engineer and my husband, she explained. She bought new clothes, upgrading from her elegant but conservative wardrobe to something more corporate, more powerful. Image matters, she said, modeling a new suit that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Richard says we're not just selling engineering services, we're selling success. Since when do you care what Richard thinks? I asked. Since he started trusting my judgment on 8-figure contracts. David, this is important to me. I'm good at this, really good. For the first time in 13 years, I'm using my brain for something other than planning charity auctions. I know. I'm proud of you. I just miss having dinner with my wife sometimes. She kissed me, quick and distracted. The Peterson contract closes next week. After that, things will calm down. Things did not calm down. If anything, they intensified. Laura got a membership at the executive club where Richard worked out. Networking, she explained. You'd be amazed how many deals get discussed on treadmills. She upgraded her phone to the latest iPhone. Better for presentations. She started working Saturdays. Just for a few hours to get ahead of the week. I was too buried in my own work to pay proper attention. The Denver Convention Center project had just been approved. 2.5 million square feet of complex engineering that would be Harrington's largest project ever. Richard, in a rare moment of deference, had put me in complete charge. "This is your baby," he'd said. "Don't screw it up." As if I would ever be careless with something that would stand for 100 years, hosting millions of people, bearing my invisible signature in every calculated beam. The convention center consumed me. I worked 18-hour days, checking and rechecking calculations, innovating solutions for problems that had never been solved before. My seismic dampening system alone required 3 months of mathematical modeling. I barely noticed when Laura stopped coming home for dinner. I didn't question when she said she was spending the weekend at her mother's, but her mother called looking for her. She must have meant next weekend, I told Patricia, distracted by a particularly complex load distribution problem. "David, is everything all right?" Laura hasn't seemed herself lately when we talk. "Everything's fine. She's just busy with work. You know how it is." I don't, actually. In my day, wives didn't work themselves to exhaustion while their husbands were home. There was judgment in her tone, but I ignored it. Patricia had never approved of Laura's career ambitions, had always thought she should be content as a homemaker. It was a Thursday night in March when everything changed. I was in my home office reviewing foundation specifications for the convention center when my phone rang. Laura, calling from her cell. "David, I'm such an idiot. I left my laptop at home and I have the Peterson final presentation at 8 tomorrow morning. The files are on my desktop. Can you email them to me?" "Of course. Where are you?" "Still at the office. Richard and I are going over the approach one more time. You know how important this is? It's a $50 million contract. Password? Emily's birthday, 6 digits." I found her MacBook on the kitchen counter and opened it. Her Outlook was still logged in, emails cascading down the screen in an endless waterfall of corporate communication. I clicked on the desktop, looking for the Peterson files, when my cursor accidentally clicked on a folder labeled Personal. I should have closed it immediately. After 15 years of the marriage, we still respected each other's privacy. It was one of the foundations of our relationship. Trust meant not needing to check up on each other. But the subfolder names made me pause. Transition planning, post-acquisition structure, DM documentation, DM. My initials. My hand trembled slightly as I opened the first folder. Even then, some part of me knew what I was about to find. Maybe I'd known for weeks but refused to acknowledge it. The late nights, the new clothes, the energy that seemed to come from something more than job satisfaction. The emails loaded slowly, each one a nail in the coffin of my marriage. They started 8 months ago, shortly after Laura began working at Harrington. Professional exchanges about client strategies, market positioning, growth opportunities. Richard asking Laura's opinion on personnel decisions. Laura suggesting approaches for difficult clients. Normal business correspondence between executives. Then, gradually, like cracks spreading through compromised concrete, the tone shifted. "Thank you for staying late to review the Morrison proposal. Your insights were invaluable." R. "Happy to help. It's nice to work with someone who appreciates strategic thinking." L. "Your husband is lucky to have you. Though I wonder if he truly appreciates what he has." R. "David appreciates me in his way, but engineering is his first love. I've always known that." L. "If you were mine, you'd never doubt being first." R. The progression was methodical, calculated. Richard had seduced my wife the way he'd taken over the company, gradually, systematically, making each step seem logical and inevitable. By November, 3 months after she started, the emails had become explicit. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. R. I can still feel you. When David kissed me goodbye this morning, all I could think about was your mouth on mine. L. Room 1247 at the Ritz-Carlton. Our usual. Tell him you're at your mother's. Ari. He's at the construction site until late. Come to the house. I want you in our bed. L. I stood up, walked to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bile and rage. Then I returned to the laptop with the mechanical precision I'd apply to analyzing a structural failure. Document everything. Understand the full scope of the damage. Determine if anything can be salvaged. The personal messages were devastating in their casual cruelty. They discussed me like I was a piece of furniture, necessary but uninteresting, something to be worked around rather than considered. David spent an hour last night explaining his new seismic dampening system. I wanted to scream with boredom. L. Poor bastard probably thought you were interested. R. I've gotten good at faking interest after 15 years, the same way I fake other things. L. You don't have to fake anything with me. R. Double quote, no. With you, everything is real. Too real sometimes. I've never felt anything like this. L. But worse than the personal betrayal was the business conspiracy. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning my professional and personal destruction. Once the convention center is complete, we make our move. David will be so exhausted from the project, he won't see it coming. R. I've been laying groundwork. Mentioned to Peterson that David seems stressed, making small errors. They're concerned. L. Perfect. I'll suggest in the next partner meeting that he needs a sabbatical. For his health. R. And while he's gone, we discover critical flaws in his convention center design? L. Exactly. My friend from Harvard, Marcus Webb, can do the redesign. We'll position it as saving the project from disaster. R. David's reputation will be destroyed. He'll never work in Denver again. L. Or anywhere else once we're done. I've already got our consultant preparing documentation about structural flaws in the Apex building. We'll discover them after David's gone, making it seem like he's been covering up mistakes for years. R. The financial theft was extensive and methodical. Spreadsheets showing systematic transfers from our joint accounts to accounts in Laura's name alone. A second mortgage on our house that she'd taken out by forging my signature. $500,000 that had disappeared into offshore accounts. The children's college funds, meant to secure their futures, transferred to bonds in only her name. Our investment portfolio, built over 15 years of careful saving, slowly liquidated. Total theft, $1.2 million. There was a folder labeled Legal Strategy that made my blood run cold. Laura had been fabricating evidence for months. Emails from my account that I'd never sent, showing erratic behavior and threats against coworkers. Receipts for gambling debts I didn't have. Alcohol purchases that never happened. Even psychiatric intake forms for appointments I'd never attended. Dr. Morrison's assessment is perfect, one email read. Paranoid delusions, violent ideation, workplace harassment. With this documentation, you'll get full custody easily. R. The psychiatric hold order is ready to file. The moment he discovers anything, we can have him committed for 72 hours. Long enough to complete the transfers and file everything. L. There was a draft press release dated for next month. Harrington Engineering announces departure of senior engineer David Mitchell for personal reasons. The firm wishes Mr. Mitchell well as he addresses his personal challenges. The coup de grace was an email thread from just 2 days ago. Everything is in place for December 16th, the day after the convention center presentation. R. His moment of triumph becomes his destruction. Poetic. L. He'll get his termination letter and what he thinks is his bonus envelope. You file for divorce that same day. By New Year's, we'll be running Harrington together and you'll be free. R. 15 years of investment about to pay off. Playing the devoted wife, pretending to care about load calculations and construction sites. Finally, I'll have the life I deserve. L. We could even have the announcement party at the Brown Palace. Same ballroom where you married him. R. I love that. Full circle. From prisoner to partner. L. Partner in every sense, business and personal. Richard and Laura Harrington has a nice ring to it. R. Yes, it does. So much better than Mitchell. That name has been like a chain around my neck for 15 years. L. I sat in the darkness of my office for an hour, not moving, barely breathing. The house I designed with such precision, every angle calculated for optimal living, felt like a tomb. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of our neighborhood: dogs barking, cars passing, lives continuing in blissful ignorance while mine collapsed like a building with compromised foundations. Then the engineer in me took over. When a structure fails, you don't panic. You assess. You document. You calculate all forces at play. You determine if the structure can be repaired or if it requires complete demolition. And if demolition is necessary, you control it precisely, ensuring the collapse happens exactly as planned, destroying only what needs to be destroyed. I opened my own laptop and began my research. Richard Harrington, Harvard MBA, class of 2008. His digital footprint was extensive but carefully curated. However, I'd learned something about finding hidden structural flaws. You had to look at the connections, the joints where different elements met. That's where the weaknesses always were. It took me 3 hours of digging through archived websites, old social media posts, and cached pages. But I found what Richard had paid considerable sums to bury: a cocaine addiction that had gotten him quietly expelled from Goldman Sachs, the sealed sexual harassment settlement from his second job, the NDA not quite tight enough to prevent careful investigation, massive debts from failed cryptocurrency investments, nearly $3 million owed to people who didn't accept bankruptcy as an answer. Most interesting was his recent engagement to Victoria Pemberton, 28 years old, Harvard Law degree, her father's ruthlessness wrapped in designer clothes. Thomas Pemberton owned Pemberton Construction, the largest construction firm in Colorado. The merger contingent on the marriage would create a regional powerhouse worth $500 million. Victoria's social media was full of wedding planning, gushing posts about Richard, photos of them at charity galas and ski resorts. She was clearly in love, or at least in love with the idea of being Mrs. Richard Harrington, wife of a powerful CEO. Laura Bennett Mitchell, University of Michigan, MBA, 2007. Her digital history was cleaner but not spotless. Her father Robert's construction company was smaller than she'd led me to believe, struggling with debt that would likely lead to bankruptcy within 2 years. Her mother Patricia was active in conservative Catholic organizations that considered divorce a mortal sin, adultery grounds for excommunication. Her sister Jennifer had married a fundamentalist pastor who ran a popular blog about family values and the sanctity of marriage. I created new email accounts using Proton Mail, routing everything through VPNs that bounced through 7 countries. I used Tor browsers on virtual machines that would evaporate after use, leaving no digital footprint. Every action untraceable, every communication deniable. But I wouldn't act immediately. First, I needed more evidence, more ammunition. I installed recovery software on all our devices, hiding it deep in system files where even IT professionals wouldn't think to look. Every deleted message, every private browsing session, every photo they thought was gone forever, all of it flowing to encrypted drives I kept in a safety deposit box Laura didn't know about. For 3 weeks, I lived a double life that would have impressed even Laura. I went to work, reviewed calculations, attended meetings, came home to her kisses and lies. I watched her dress for her client dinners, knowing she was meeting Richard. I listened to her stories about difficult presentations, knowing she'd spent the afternoon in his bed at the Ritz-Carlton. "You're working too hard on the convention center," she said one night, massaging my shoulders as I sat at my desk. "You look exhausted, honey." "Just want everything perfect," I replied, saving another recovered photo of her and Richard at our cabin in Vail, the one my father and I had built by hand over 3 summers. "It will be perfect. You're the best structural engineer in Denver, probably in the country." "Richard doesn't seem to think so." "Richard's an idiot," she said, kissing the top of my head. "He just doesn't understand what you do. But I do. I've always understood your brilliance." The lie came so easily to her, I wondered if she even recognized it as false anymore. Maybe after months of deception, she'd convinced herself that her betrayal was justified, that I deserved it somehow for the crime of being boring, stable, predictable. Nathan noticed something was wrong before Emily did. At 16, he had my analytical mind, my ability to see patterns. "Mom's different," he said one evening while Laura was at another strategy session. "Different how?" "She smiles more but laughs less. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense. The smiles were performance. The laughter would have been real, and there was nothing real left in her interactions with us. "Your mother's under a lot of stress at work," I said. "It'll pass." "Will it?" Nathan's eyes were too knowing for 16. "Dad, if something was really wrong, you'd tell us, right?" "I'd protect you," I said. "Always." That satisfied him for the moment, but I knew I was running out of time. The convention center presentation was in 3 weeks. Richard and Laura planned to execute their destruction of my life the day after. I had to act first. I started with subtle reconnaissance. "How's Victoria?" I asked Richard during a planning meeting. "The wedding planning must be overwhelming." His smile tightened slightly. "January wedding. Her father wants to invite half of Denver's business community. The merger must be exciting. Pemberton Construction and Harrington Engineering. You'll dominate the market." "That's the plan. Strategic positioning for maximum market capture." "Victoria seems lovely. I met her at the Denver Business Alliance Gala last month." "She's adequate," Richard said, and something in his tone told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't marrying Victoria for love. She was a business acquisition, nothing more. That evening, I told Laura I'd be spending several nights at the construction site, doing final inspections before the presentation. "Of course," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "I'll probably be working late too. Richard wants to review the entire client portfolio before year-end." "That's a lot of late nights with Richard," I said, keeping my tone casual. "It's important work. We're repositioning the entire firm for the next decade." "Yes," I thought, "positioning yourselves to steal everything I've built." Instead of going to the construction site, I went to Patrick's empty house. My brother was in Portland for a 3-week project, and he'd given me a key years ago. From his home office, I began constructing the elaborate architecture of their destruction. The email to Victoria Pemberton was simple, direct, and devastating. "Dear Ms. Pemberton, you don't know me, but my conscience demands I inform you of something before your wedding. Richard Harrington has been conducting an affair with Laura Mitchell, a married employee, for 8 months. I'm attaching photographic evidence from the Ritz-Carlton Denver, your family's hotel, that documents their relationship. The timestamps on these photos correspond to dates when Mr. Harrington told you he was traveling for business or working late on acquisitions. A woman of your intelligence and standing deserves honesty before entering marriage. I thought you should know. A concerned friend." The photos were real, recovered from Laura's phone and Richard's cloud storage. Nothing pornographic, but undeniably intimate. Them entering hotel rooms together, kissing in the elevator, his hand possessively on her lower back in the lobby. Each photo's metadata showed dates and times when Richard had told Victoria he was elsewhere. The emails to Harrington's 5 biggest clients were crafted to appear as confessions from Laura. "Gentlemen, my conscience can no longer bear this deception. Richard Harrington has been forcing me to provide your confidential bid information to your competitors. Morrison Construction underbid you by exactly 2% on 3 recent projects because they had access to your sealed proposals. Grayson Development knew your maximum budget for the Riverside expansion. Pembroke Associates had your proprietary pricing structure for the downtown development. I'm attaching proof of these breaches, including emails discussing the information transfer and bank records showing payments from your competitors to offshore accounts controlled by Mr. Harrington. I'm destroying my career by telling you this, but you deserve to know the truth about how Harrington Engineering really operates. You trusted us with your confidential information, and that trust was betrayed for profit. I'm deeply sorry for my role in this deception. Laura Mitchell, Director of Client Services." Each client received their actual bid documents that competitors had mysteriously beaten, email threads discussing the information, and financial records showing suspicious transfers that coincided with lost bids. The regulatory letters were precisely targeted. The Colorado State Board of Engineers received documentation showing Richard making technical decisions only a licensed professional engineer should make, overriding safety specifications without proper authority. The IRS got detailed records of embezzled funds, unreported income, and suspicious transfers to offshore accounts. The DEA received security footage of Richard's dealer entering Harrington's offices, complete with dates, times, and license plate numbers that would match their existing surveillance. But the masterpiece was the all-staff email from Laura's account. Dear colleagues, after 8 months of deceiving my husband David with Richard Harrington, I can no longer maintain this charade. We've been having an affair while planning to force David out and restructure the firm for our personal gain. I'm attaching our private communications where we discuss which of you we plan to terminate after taking control, whose salaries we intended to cut to increase our bonuses, how we would eliminate the engineering focus to become purely profit-driven, our plans to sell the firm to offshore investors once we'd extracted maximum value. You deserve to know what your leadership really thinks of you. Richard calls you expensive liabilities. I referred to the engineering team as necessary evils until we can outsource. I'm also confessing to fabricating evidence against my husband, including false psychiatric evaluations and forged emails, to destroy his reputation and gain full custody of our children. I'm deeply ashamed of what I've become. Laura Mitchell. Each message was scheduled to send at times when I would have absolutely bulletproof alibis, during the convention center presentation to 200 witnesses, while at documented site inspections with city officials from my phone while it was demonstrably in my possession at public events. December 14th arrived cold and clear, the mountains white with fresh snow. I spent the evening at the construction site as promised, surrounded by my team doing final walkthroughs of what would be my masterpiece. Everything looks perfect, Mr. Mitchell, the site foreman said. This design is absolutely brilliant. The way you've integrated the seismic dampening with the aesthetic elements. It's art and engineering combined. Every calculation triple-checked, I replied. Every beam exactly where it should be. This building will outlast us all. My grandkids' will probably attend events here, he said. That's quite a legacy. That's the plan. Build something that endures. At home that night, Laura was asleep when I arrived at midnight. Her phone charged on the nightstand, her laptop closed on the dresser. She looked peaceful in the moonlight streaming through our bedroom windows. Beautiful even, like the woman I'd married 15 years ago at the Brown Palace. For a moment, I remembered our wedding night, how she'd cried when we got to our hotel room, not from sadness but from overwhelming joy. I can't believe I get to spend my life with you, she'd said. I can't believe someone as brilliant as you chose me. Now I knew the tears were probably from realizing what she'd committed herself to. 15 years of pretending to care about engineering, about stability, about me. December 15th, the day of the convention center presentation, the day before Richard and Laura planned to destroy me, dawned crisp and bright. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the Italian one Laura had bought me for our 10th anniversary, the tie she'd given me last Christmas, the watch my father had worn, simple but precise. You look perfect, Laura said, adjusting my tie with practiced familiarity. You're going to blow them away today. I intend to, I replied. She kissed me goodbye, leaving lipstick on my cheek that I didn't wipe off until I was in the car. Let her think everything was normal. Let her think she'd won. I arrived at Harrington at 7 a.m. to find the office already in chaos. Employees clustered in the lobby, voices raised in disbelief and anger, phones buzzing with incoming calls and texts. Through the glass walls of the executive floor, I could see Richard in his office, pacing frantically, shouting into his phone, his face red with rage. David! Marcus grabbed my arm. Holy Christ, did you see the email? What email? I let confusion and concern color my voice. He showed me his phone. The all-staff email from Laura's account was there in all its devastating glory, with attachments showing her and Richard's discussions about firing employees, cutting benefits, selling the company to offshore investors. This can't be real, I said, making my voice hollow with shock. There's more, Marcus said quietly. Apparently clients got emails too. Peterson's already called. They're terminating their contract immediately. And Victoria Pemberton is on her way here with her father and what looks like an entire law firm. As if summoned by his words, the elevator doors opened and Victoria emerged like an avenging angel in Chanel. 28 years old, Harvard law degree, her father's billions backing every step. Thomas Pemberton followed with 3 men in suits that probably cost more than most people's cars. Victoria blew past reception, heading straight for Richard's office. Even from 7 floors down, we heard the sound of her engagement ring hitting the glass wall when she threw it at him. "You lying, cheating bastard!" Her voice carried through the supposedly soundproof glass. "My family's hotel? You were screwed her in my family's hotel?" My phone rang. Laura. "David. Oh God, David, something's happened. Someone sent emails from my account. I'm about to present to 200 people," I said calmly. "Can this wait?" "David, please. You have to believe me. I didn't send those emails. Someone's framing me. The FBI is here. The FBI. David." "The convention center committee is waiting. We'll talk later." "David, don't you understand? Everything's falling apart. They're saying I embezzled money that I hung up and turned off my phone. The presentation was flawless. While I explained our innovative seismic dampening system to city officials, journalists, and industry leaders, while I detailed how this convention center would reshape Denver's skyline and economy for the next century, Harrington Engineering was collapsing 7 miles away. The mayor herself congratulated me afterward. "This is visionary work, Mr. Mitchell. Denver is lucky to have engineers of your caliber." "Thank you, Mayor. Building something that matters, something that lasts, that's all I've ever wanted to do." By the time I returned to the office at 2 p.m., the devastation was complete. 5 major clients had terminated their contracts. The FBI had seized computers and files. The State Engineering Board had suspended Richard's ability to make any technical decisions pending investigation. The IRS had frozen both company and personal accounts. The DEA had arrested Richard's dealer, who was apparently very eager to make a deal. Richard was in the main conference room with Laura, their argument visible through the glass walls to everyone in the office. He was screaming. She was sobbing, papers scattered across the table, printed emails, bank statements, photographs. "You stupid bitch," Richard's voice carried despite the glass. "You've destroyed everything. My engagement, the merger, the company, everything." "I didn't send those emails." Laura was hysterical. "Someone hacked my account. Someone set us up." "Who? Who would even know to do this?" They both turned and saw me watching. Laura's face went white. Richard's went red. Security arrived to escort Laura out. She saw me watching and mouthed, "Please," through the glass. I turned away. The FBI agent found me in my office an hour later. "Mr. Mitchell, Special Agent Rodriguez, we need to discuss some emails allegedly sent from your wife's account regarding interstate commerce fraud and embezzlement." "Of course," I said. "I just learned about this situation. I'll cooperate however I can. I can't even process this. My wife and Richard? You had no knowledge of their relationship?" "None. I trusted her completely. We've been married 15 years. We have 2 children. And the financial transfers from your joint accounts?" "What transfers?" He showed me the records. I let my face go pale, my hands shake slightly as I reviewed them. Oh God. The children's college funds, our savings. She took everything? "I'm afraid so, Mr. Mitchell. The good news is that with this documentation, we should be able to freeze the accounts and potentially recover most of it. You'll need a good divorce attorney." "Divorce," I repeated, as if the word was foreign. "I suppose, yes. I suppose that's inevitable now." "Mr. Mitchell, I have to ask, did you have any involvement in sending these emails?" "What? No. I've been focused on the convention center project for months. I barely noticed. God, I should have noticed something was wrong. She was working so many late nights. I thought she was dedicated to her job. The technical analysis shows the emails definitely came from her devices, her IP addresses. Unless she has evidence that someone physically accessed her laptop and phone. She left her laptop at home sometimes," I said. "But I wouldn't even know how to do something like that. I'm an engineer, not a hacker." When I finally got home that evening, Laura's BMW was in the driveway, but the house felt empty, hollow. I found her in the living room, still in yesterday's clothes, makeup streaked down her face, laptop open on the coffee table. "David, thank God!" She leaped up, rushed toward me. I stepped back. "Don't! Someone's framing me! They sent emails from my account, but I didn't write them. You have to believe me. The FBI showed me the financial records, Laura. Her face crumbled. I can explain. Explain what? The $1.2 million you stole? The affair with Richard? The plan to destroy my career? The forged psychiatric documents? Which part would you like to explain first? How did you know about... She stopped, realization dawning. You. You did this. I said nothing. The emails. You sent them. Did I? The technical analysis shows they came from your devices. Your IP address. Your digital fingerprints are all over them. You knew. You've known for weeks. 3 weeks, I confirmed. Your laptop. You left it open. I found your personal folder. Oh God. She collapsed onto the couch. David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just happened. No, I cut her off. Nothing just happens. Every email showed calculation, planning, deliberate cruelty. 15 years of pretending to care about load calculations and concrete strength? That's what you wrote. 15 years of deception. I was unhappy. Then you should have asked for a divorce. Instead, you chose to destroy me. Richard said you'd be fine. He said engineers always land on their feet, that you'd get another job. Richard's been arrested. Cocaine possession. The merger with Pemberton is dead. Harrington Engineering will be bankrupt by Monday. Your parents know about the affair. I made sure the email went to your mother's church address, so the whole congregation probably knows by now. Your sister's husband is preparing a sermon on the sanctity of marriage and the consequences of adultery. The Architecture Foundation expelled you this afternoon. Every firm in Denver knows what you did. She stared at me, horror growing in her eyes. You've destroyed my life. You destroyed your life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Your belongings are in the garage. The divorce papers are with them. The locks will be changed in the morning. Where will I go? I don't care. Richard's bed, if he makes bail. Your parents, if they'll take you back after this shame. A hotel, a shelter, the street. It's not my concern anymore. The children will stay with me. The court tends to frown on adultery, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit fraud in custody hearings. You can't take my children. I'm not taking them. You gave them away when you chose Richard over your family. Nathan already knows something's wrong. Emily will be devastated, but she'll recover. Children are resilient. They'll learn to live without a mother who could betray them so completely. I never betrayed them, only you. You betrayed all of us. Every late night you chose Richard over dinner with your family. Every weekend you spent in his bed instead of at Emily's recitals or Nathan's science fairs. Every dollar you stole from their college funds. You betrayed them in every possible way. She was sobbing now, ugly, desperate tears. David, please, I made a mistake. We can work through this. Counseling? Counseling? You were planning to have me committed to a psychiatric facility. You forged documents saying I was paranoid and violent. You were going to take my children, my home, my career, my sanity, everything. And now you want counseling? I wasn't really going to... Stop lying, I shouted, surprising both of us. I never shouted. For once in your worthless life, stop lying. You were going to do exactly what you planned. The only reason you didn't is because I stopped you. She stood slowly, unsteadily, gathering her purse, her phone, her laptop. At the door, she turned back one last time. I did love you once, she said quietly. In the beginning. Before you became so... predictable. Predictable, I repeated. You mean stable, reliable, trustworthy. All the things you pretended to value when you married me. Maybe I thought I valued them. Maybe I convinced myself that stability was enough. It should have been. For someone with integrity, it would have been... She left then, and I heard her car start, sputter, fail. Start again. Drive away into the December night. I stood in my empty house, the house I'd designed with such precision and care, every angle calculated for the life we were supposed to build together. Now it felt like a museum of false promises, each room a monument to deception. The next morning, Coleman Associates announced their acquisition of Harrington Engineering's assets for 10 cents on the dollar. Robert Coleman, my mentor from graduate school, called me personally. David, I heard about everything, the affair, the conspiracy, all of it. I'm sorry about your wife, but I want you to know your position is safe. More than safe. I want you to be chief engineer of the Denver branch. Robert, I appreciate that, but no buts. You're the best structural engineer in the state, possibly the country. Your convention center design is revolutionary. We need you. Hell, the city needs you. Don't let their betrayal destroy what you've built. He was right. I'd spent 15 years building a reputation, a career, a legacy of structures that would outlast us all. I wouldn't let Laura and Richard's betrayal tear that down. Within a week, Richard was formally charged with possession with intent to distribute, tax evasion, and corporate fraud. His bail was set at $2 million, which he couldn't make with his accounts frozen. He'd spend the next 18 months in federal custody awaiting trial, then another 2 to 5 years in minimum security prison. Laura's situation was more complex but equally devastating. The embezzlement charges resulted in 3 years probation and restitution payments that would consume every penny she earned for the next 2 decades. She found a job at a dental office in Aurora, filing insurance claims for $15 an hour, a far cry from her executive position. The divorce was finalized in record time. Laura got nothing. The house was mine. The assets were either frozen or returned to me. Custody was granted to me with supervised visitation for her every other Saturday. Nathan handled it with the analytical detachment I'd expected. She made a cost-benefit analysis and chose wrong, he said, 16 years old but thinking like someone twice his age. The temporary excitement of the affair wasn't worth the permanent loss of family, career, and reputation. Emily was harder. At 13, she still believed in true love and happily ever after. The revelation that her mother had been living a double life shattered something fundamental in her worldview. How could she do it? Emily asked me one night, crying into my shoulder. How could she pretend to love us while planning to destroy you? I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people become someone else, someone even they don't recognize. Will I become someone else when I grow up? Not if you stay true to your core values. Not if you build your life on solid foundations instead of lies. 6 months after the collapse, I was in my new office at Coleman Mitchell Engineering. Robert had added my name to the firm, reviewing plans for the Children's Hospital when Patrick visited from Portland. We sat in my office, sharing bourbon our father would have appreciated, looking out at the Denver skyline where my building stood among the others, testimonies to permanence in an impermanent world. You orchestrated the whole thing, didn't you? Patrick said quietly. The emails, the timing, everything. What makes you think that? Because I know you. You don't just identify structural failures. You determine exactly how and when they'll collapse. And sometimes, you help them along. I studied the amber liquid in my glass. What would Dad have done? The same thing, probably. He didn't tolerate shoddy construction, in buildings or in people. I just ensured the truth came out. Very precisely, very thoroughly, with maximum damage to those who deserved it. They tried to destroy me, Pat. My career, my reputation, my relationship with my children. They were going to have me committed, take everything I'd built, and celebrate at the place where I married her. So you destroyed them first. I revealed what they were. There's a difference. Patrick raised his glass. To structural integrity. To controlled demolition, I countered. We drank in comfortable silence. Brothers who understood that sometimes the only way to build something lasting is to first clear away everything that's rotten. A year after the divorce, Laura wrote me a letter. David, I know you won't respond, but I need you to know that I understand now. I see what I did, what I became, what I threw away for nothing. Richard was nothing, just danger and excitement and the opposite of everything stable you represented. I confused chaos for passion, destruction for creation. I work at a dental office now. It's quiet, predictable, all the things I thought I hated about our life. But now I understand that predictability is another word for reliability, for trustworthiness, for love that doesn't need constant drama to feel real. I think about structural engineering sometimes, all those concepts you tried to teach me. Load-bearing walls, points of failure, the necessity of solid foundations. I understand now that our marriage was a structure, and I was the flaw that caused it to collapse. The children look beautiful in the photos I see on Facebook. Nathan has your precision, your way of seeing the world in patterns and logic. Emily has your creativity, your ability to build beauty from broken things. They're better off without me. I know that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Some things can't be repaired, only cleared away so something better can be built. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for who I became. For who I always was, maybe, underneath the performance of being a good wife. You built on stone. I built on sand. The earthquake was inevitable. Laura. I filed the letter with the divorce papers in a folder marked Structural Failures and returned to my drafting table. It's been 3 years now. Coleman Mitchell Engineering has grown to over 100 employees. The convention center won international awards and has hosted events that brought millions in revenue to Denver. The Children's Hospital opened last month, a gleaming testament to the healing power of good design. Nathan is thriving at CU Boulder, studying structural engineering with a minor in computer science. I want to understand both kinds of architecture, he told me, the physical and the digital. They're both about building things that last. Emily is at Denver School of the Arts, creating sculptures from recycled materials that somehow capture both fragility and strength. Her latest piece, titled Foundation, is made from broken concrete and twisted rebar formed into something beautiful and new. I'm dating Margaret Sullivan now, a therapist who specializes in trauma recovery. She knows the whole story. You planned their destruction perfectly, she said on our third date. Every detail, every consequence, every possible point of failure accounted for. Does that bother you? Number. They were going to destroy you. You defended yourself with the tools you had. The tools I had were their own words, their own actions. Exactly. You didn't create their guilt. You revealed it. There's a kind of justice in that. Is there? Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. They were going to have you committed to a psychiatric facility. They were going to take your children, your home, your career. They were going to celebrate your destruction at your wedding venue. How is what you did worse than what they planned? She was right, of course, but sometimes, late at night, I think about the surgical precision of their demolition, how I calculated every angle of collapse, and I wonder what that says about me. Richard was released 6 months ago. He lives in Boston now, working as an assistant manager at a car rental agency. His LinkedIn profile claims he's a business consultant and life coach, but a Google search reveals no clients, no website, no evidence of any consulting beyond his own delusions. Victoria Pemberton married a tech entrepreneur last year. The wedding was featured in the Denver Post's society pages. Richard wasn't mentioned. Laura still works at the dental office. She lives in the same studio apartment in Aurora, drives a 15-year-old Honda Civic, shops at discount stores. I ran into her at a grocery store last month. She was in the generic foods aisle, comparing prices on pasta. David, she said, freezing when she saw me. Laura. You look well. I am. She looked older, tired, worn down by the weight of consequences. The sophisticated executive who'd charmed Denver's elite was gone, replaced by a middle-aged woman in discount clothing who counted pennies. The children? She asked. Thriving. Good. That's good. Do they ever ask about me? Sometimes, less than they used to. I see Emily's art on Instagram. She's talented. She is. Nathan made the dean's list. He did. We stood there awkwardly, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now strangers divided by betrayal and consequences. I should go, she said, gesturing at her basket of generic groceries. Yes. She started to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, I know you sent those emails. I can't prove it, but I know. Does it matter? You wrote the words. You stole the money. You had the affair. You planned my destruction. Whether the truth came out by accident or design doesn't change the truth itself. No, she said quietly. I suppose it doesn't. She left, and I continued shopping, buying ingredients for dinner with Margaret and the kids. Life moving forward, built on foundations of truth rather than deception. Last night, I stood in my office looking at the Denver skyline, All those buildings reaching toward the stars, each one an act of faith in engineering, in mathematics, in the immutable laws of physics. The convention center gleamed in the distance, its lights reflecting off the glass and steel of the surrounding structures. Margaret came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Foundations," I said. "How everything depends on them being solid." "And yours are solid now?" "Solid as bedrock, built on truth, reinforced with justice." "And revenge." "Not revenge. Structural correction. When you discover a fatal flaw, you don't ignore it. You address it, completely and permanently. By destroying everything connected to it, by removing what's compromised so what remains can stand safely. Nathan called from downstairs. He was home for winter break, eager to show me his senior project designs. Emily was in her studio, working on a new piece made from shattered glass that somehow caught light and transformed it into rainbows. "This is what I built from the ruins. Not a perfect family, but an honest one. Not a fairy tale, but a structure that will withstand any storm because it's built on truth." My phone buzzed with an email from a potential client, forwarded by Robert Coleman. A new project, a sustainable housing development that would provide affordable homes for thousands. Another chance to build something that matters, something that lasts. I opened my laptop and began reviewing the specifications. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for input, for calculation, for the precise mathematics that transforms vision into reality. This is what I do. I build things. I ensure they're strong enough to bear the loads they'll carry. I calculate every force, account for every variable, plan for every possible failure mode. And when someone tries to destroy what I've built with patience and precision and love, I don't just defend. I don't just survive. I engineer their complete and systematic demolition, so thorough that they can never build anything false again. The pencil moves across paper, each line precise, each measurement exact. Somewhere across the city, Laura is probably getting ready for another day of filing insurance claims, another day of minimum wage drudgery, decades of restitution payments stretching ahead like a highway through a desert. Richard is probably in Boston, posting another motivational quote on social media that no one will read. His Harvard dreams dissolved like his cocaine in so many hotel rooms. They built their conspiracy on a foundation of deception and greed, thinking the structure would hold if they just believed hard enough. But I knew better. I've always known better. Buildings stand or fall based on mathematics, not emotion. Truth is load-bearing. Lies are cosmetic. And when the earthquake comes, whether natural or engineered, only structures built on solid foundations survive. My father taught me that in his workshop that smelled of sawdust and honesty. "Measure twice, cut once," he'd say. "But David, sometimes you need to tear down to the studs before you can rebuild properly." I measured everything twice. I cut with precision. And now I build again, on foundations of stone and truth and mathematical certainty. Structures that will stand long after we're all gone. Testimonies to the immutable fact that good engineering, like justice, is simply a matter of applying the right forces in the right places at exactly the right time. The calculations continue deep into the night, each number a small act of faith in the physics that governs our world. Outside, Denver sleeps, trusting that the buildings will stand, that the engineers did their job, that someone, somewhere, is always checking the math. I always am. Because that's what engineers do. We build things that last. And sometimes, to build something that lasts, we first have to clear away everything that's rotten, everything that's compromised, everything that would eventually cause a collapse. The pencil moves steadily across the paper. The calculations never lie. The foundation holds. It always holds when it's built correctly.